life, I have struggled with numerous mental health disorders. Present among those struggles are anxiety and seasonal depression. As a youth, I've spent my childhood seeing the daily effects of climate change, as well as the sharp debates over it. I am not here to argue about the presence of climate change, as that is a discussion I've had far too many times. Instead, I am here to document the effects it has had on my mental health and the mental health of those around me. This essay will discuss climate change's connections to those who suffer from seasonal depression, generalized anxiety disorder, empathetic stress, and autism spectrum disorder, as well as related disorders. The goal of this paper is to show how the ecological crisis has also been a mental health crisis for millions. I would like to begin by identifying my credentials to speak on this subject. As previously stated, I am no stranger to mental health. I've been attending therapy for over 2 years, and I've been in counseling for the majority of my life. A common theme of my time in therapy and counseling has been working on tools to aid me in coping with depression and anxiety. I've had plenty of time to explore the frequency and causes of my disorders, both independently and with professionals. This is how I am aware and able to identify the effects climate change has had on them. Climate change has been a hot-button topic for the majority of my childhood, and still presently is. These convenient circumstances, as well as my interest in disorderly behavior and psychology, put me in a favorable and unique position to speak on this subject. Seasonal depression is a developed disorder that presents as depressive symptoms such as low energy, harmful thoughts, and emotional difficulties that are caused by a lack of sunlight and/or changes in weather conditions. It is easy to draw parallels between this condition and the effects of climate change. The shift in temperature and weather has been caused by climate change has undoubtedly affected millions, myself included, with this disorder. Seasonal depression, like all depressive disorders, is extremely difficult to deal with, and climate change's part in increasing the frequency of depressive episodes for those of us affected has greatly worsened our individual and collective mental health. It has likely also had effects on other depressive disorders, and perhaps caused many to develop such disorders. Furthermore, those affected by generalized anxiety disorder or other related anxiety disorders have most definitely felt the effects of climate change on their mental health and stability. Anxiety disorders are classified as disorders in which the individual suffers from a frequently heightened sense of panic, excessive worry, difficulty with decision-making, and preemptive fear-based reactions to triggers. This is commonly seen with social anxiety, in which the individual expresses these symptoms concerning social events and situations, but there is a wide range of specific triggers that can affect someone with GAD or related disorders. I have been greatly triggered by the effects of climate change and the general health of our planet, causing an eco-anxiety over my future and the future of my species. In other words, the harm that climate change has done to our planet has caused me and plenty of others to develop anxiety about what that damage could mean for the future. Anxiety is often consuming and can limit an individual's ability to go about their everyday life. Having a constant trigger worsens this, and there's very little break in between anxiety-based episodes. Furthermore, empathetic stress is not a disorder listed in the DSM-5, as it is less of a disorder and more of a psychological state. Similar to generalized anxiety disorder, people who experience empathetic stress will often feel anxiety-like symptoms over the well-being of those around them to an extreme and irrational level. These people tend to feel the effects at their peak when there's a crisis going on around them, and climate change is most definitely a crisis. This crisis has had an extreme effect on these people due to its global impact and long-term presence. Because of this, people who experience empathetic stress are becoming more and more symptomatic to the point where many of them could be diagnosed with some form of anxiety. This is creating more mental health struggles for the general public. The final disorder I would like to touch on is autism spectrum disorder, commonly referred to as ASD or just autism. Another disorder that I struggle with, autism spectrum disorder, is a diverse disorder in which the individual experiences a difference in mental processing and often suffers from symptoms such as sensory issues, social difficulty, meltdowns, and difficulty with comprehension. Autism affects the way those who have it see and interact with the world. People with autism tend to struggle with overstimulation as they are more likely to absorb the stimulation around them to a greater degree than those without this disorder. This leads to overstimulated states that are often called meltdowns. A common way of mitigating meltdowns is for those affected by autism to keep a pattern and schedule. Knowing what is to come limits the amount of stressful stimulus that we have to process. It makes it easier for many of us to navigate the world. This often lends to us having difficulty with change. Climate change, as the name suggests, is a change that has affected many aspects of the world and many people's lives, including those affected by this disorder, leading to a more frequent occurrence of meltdowns and a greater suffering from the autistic population. On top of this, autistic people tend to be more conscious of what is happening around them, so we are more likely to notice and be affected by the negative harm climate change has had on the physical planet. There are several other disorders and psychological states that have been negatively affected by climate change. I only want to speak for my own experiences that I can understand and explain. However, it would be foolish for me not to acknowledge the harm that climate change has done to those around me with disorders such as ADHD, hyperactive attention deficit disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and narcolepsy, a disorder commonly associated with extreme drowsiness and uncontrollable stages of sleep, and more. These are not my experiences to speak on, but I have witnessed the change in mental health and mental stability that people with these disorders have had in direct relation to climate change. So, with all that stated, it is unreasonable not to acknowledge the clear effects climate change has had on millions who struggle with a variety of mental health conditions. This shows that it is not only dangerous for the health of our planet, but also the psychological health of our species. Many of these disorders affect the way we operate in society, and so symptoms of them being worsened and occurring in increasing frequency pose a threat to the very structure of our society. A society that cannot operate together to a successful degree will further struggle to repair the damage of climate change. This is why addressing climate change and its physical and psychological effects head-on should be a necessity for all people across the planet. That way, we may hope to repair the damage that is caused for everyone. Thank you.